All right, welcome back. Let's dive into the main topic, which is the framework to help you understand how to lead a customer all the way from an initial prospect that is just meeting you all the way to a close without feeling like you're being manipulative or being pushy. The acronym that I use over here is called GRACE, GRACE. So let's dive right into it. First of all, just kind of to recap, this is where we're at. So we talked a bit about defining and targeting after your ideal target customer persona. Then we discussed a bit on developing that comprehensive sales and marketing strategy. The different funnels, the channels that you use, copywriting. We've talked a bit about lead generation and prospecting, email outreach. Now we are at part number 4, which is moving a customer through the funnel. So I want you to first understand that this framework that I'm about to show you applies not only in sales interactions where you're speaking to someone in person. It can happen over a course of a single interaction, or it could also happen over a series of interactions, or it can also happen, and you can also see elements of it in play in, let's say, your email, on your website, and in different mediums that you're touching a customer. So this framework, I would say, it applies both in the moment, in an individual interaction, but also throughout the entire customer journey as well. So let's look at what it entails. Before we jump into the framework itself, I want to kind of set some basic expectations in and around kind of the sales psychology side of things. Oftentimes when we think of sales, there's a lot of sort of expectation around what it means to be selling or being sold to. So do keep that in mind, because you don't want to limit yourselves by your own definitions of, or at least by what the definitions have been set by society in and around what a sales means. So the way I like to view it is, and I'll call it sales as sales, not as consultation, because at the end of the day, it is an interaction where you are trying to get a customer to buy something. But I'd say that the best mindset is to understand that you're trying to leave a customer better than when you found them. That's all you're trying to do. Even if they don't buy from you, if you have achieved this objective, then you have done a good job, right? So hopefully they are in a situation where you have a product or service that will actually benefit them. Obviously, if your product or service does not benefit your customer, then you shouldn't be selling to them. Make sense? The second thing to focus on is make it about the customer. Don't make it about yourself. No matter how heavy of an expectation your sales management might place on you in and around targets and goals, you will not be a good salesperson if you are focusing on your own goals, i.e., you want to make a sale, you want to make a conversion, because customers will be able to sense that. They can smell a hungry salesperson. You always want to make the interaction about the customer, make it about what they want, their goals, their objectives. And on the other side of the picture, you're showing them how you can help them achieve the things that they're motivated to go towards. Make sense? So this is what the framework looks like. GRACE stands for greet, research, answer, close, and expectations. Use it in tandem with your copywriting language. So we'll talk a bit more about copywriting after this. But yeah, it's applied to both offline and online, but also, like I mentioned before, whether it's a individual interaction or over the course of the relationship that you're building with your client. So here's what it looks like in different mediums. So the greet, and we'll go into each of them in detail in a second. The greet, let's say if you're in a B2B interaction, that could be the intro email, the first email that you send to them as you're trying to seek permission to continue the conversation, right? If it's on a website, the greet is the first thing that they see when they land on your website. What's above the fold? When we talk about, in a second, I'll talk a bit about building credibility, building trust, that's using testimonials. If you're in a retail situation, the greet is the first thing that they see, your storefront. Maybe it's how your reps are greeting people as they come into the store. Maybe it's your visual merchandising, what's in front of the window, what's the layout of the store, those kind of things. Research in a B2B setting, that's your discovery call. That's where you're asking questions to understand if they're a good fit. You're qualifying your customer, but you're also trying to understand their context so that you can pitch your solution and show them how it benefits them in their context. If it's a website, that could be in the form of a survey or a quiz, or maybe it's a lead magnet that you get someone to click and download that gives you that information that you need about where they are in their kind of buyer's journey. If it's retail, it might be a sales rep directly asking questions. Your answer is basically your pitch. That's where you present your solution. If it's B2B, that's your demo call. If it's your website, that's your product page. If it's your retail location, maybe that's again the demo of whatever product that you're selling. The close is in the B2B, that's usually the proposal. In the website, that's maybe your checkout page, maybe your FAQ section. What is your call to actions? In retail, again, that's in person, closing someone, getting them to move to the counter to pay. And then expectations in B2B is, the onboarding process. If it's your website, that's maybe your confirmation email and what comes after, maybe your drip campaigns. If it's retail, maybe it's how you set up the whatever product or service you're selling with the customer. Cool. So we will be going through all of them, but I want to remind you that there is also this notion that every customer is going through a slightly different journey. So it applies not only to the entire process, but also to each of the elements within them as well. So like, let's say Grace in itself, it can also apply to, let's say your sales call itself. You can, the first greet is obviously, let's say your intro email where you're trying to get that sales call, but in the sales call, you also want to make a good first impression as well. So all those elements can fall into all of your pages, into your pricing pages, into your sales calls, into your blogs, those kind of things as well. So the first concept I want to introduce you to before we jump into Grace is understanding that sales is a gradual process. Sales is not a one-time event. It's not a single interaction. What you're trying to do is, as you are conversing with your customer, you need to get them through a series of realizations. They need to start believing one thing after another in order to become sort of, I guess, aware that they need to buy a solution, that they have a problem, and that there's some form of urgency. So we'll talk about all of those steps in a second. But you want to understand what are the micro steps, because you need to be able to escalate that conversation gradually. And this escalation in some instances can happen over one single interaction without your customer leaving you, or it might happen over a series of interactions as well. So a simple way of thinking of it is, a customer needs to believe a certain set of things in order to move to that next step. So for example, they usually need to start by, this is just one example here, and this is very specific to one product. But for example, they might start by thinking, oh, I think that what I'm doing right now isn't working, right? That there's a better way of getting leads or making sales, if I'm selling some sort of marketing program. And I can actually make, let's say, 6 to 7 figures a year without prospecting. And how I do that, it's by building a brand. And that social media is the best option for them. And from there, I need to believe that this social media product or course will get me results faster than any other existing alternatives in the market. And then I need to believe that I need this product now in order to take action, right? So that's a rough example. Like usually most people need to first become aware that they have a problem, that something's not working, that they are not meeting kind of industry standards, or their competitors are doing better than they are. And then they need to understand that, okay, this is the way to solve that problem. And then they need to believe that this is the most effective solution, i.e. the one that you are selling them. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the awareness, consideration, decision, and close framework that HubSpot does. But this journey specific to every customer may look a little bit different depending on what product or service you're selling. But this is the rough kind of outline, right? If you understand that, you'll also acknowledge and realize that you don't just jump to asking a customer to buy now in the first interaction. That's obviously how you end up becoming pushy or becoming a bit greasy. You need to gradually get them through those series of realizations. And it's not one single interaction. It's not like you just making a sale. You get the customer to slowly realize these things, which eventually leads to them realizing that they should give you their money because you are the right solution for them. Make sense? So, this is just one example. But again, there are many, many different ways of approaching it. But I recommend that you start doing this for your own business first in order to understand how it would look like. So I'll give you another example from one of the products that we used to sell when I was working at the incubator accelerator. So back when I was working for the accelerator, we had this fundraising training program. And this program was designed to help entrepreneurs understand kind of the ins and outs of raising capital from angel investors. So especially your seed round. So what goes into, pitching to an investor? How do you structure your round? Those kind of things. So for me, basically, I kind of mapped out the same gradualization process. So for that, it looked like something like this for our client. Number one, the client needs to realize that they need to scale. So maybe they might say, oh, you know what? I'm not growing as fast as I can, or maybe in order to get to my next milestone, or in order to be able to run the business that I want to run, I need to be able to grow it. And that number two, funding will help me scale. Number three, that I don't know anything about fundraising. Number four is that I need them to view Spring, the company that I was working for, is the expert at fundraising. Number five, I need them to realize that they need to start the process early because fundraising doesn't happen overnight. And then thereafter, I need them to realize that this course or this program that Spring was offering will help them save both time and money on raising their round. So that's kind of my rough series of realizations that I mapped out in terms of gradualization for those customers when I was working for that company. So once I had that mapped out, then it became a lot easier to understand what tools, what assets to create, and kind of where to meet them, right? Especially considering what questions they're asking. So I use this in tangent with again, I mentioned the awareness, consideration, decision, close framework. So over here, you can see, okay, top of funnel. If I'm trying to get them to realize that they need to scale, what can I be doing? So these are some options. Ads, I can run meetups, I can send email drip campaigns. And the goal of these early touch points is to help them realize that if they're not growing their business, they're dying, right? They're dying as in the business is not doing well, because especially if you're a startup, every startup should be making some form of growth, whether it's revenue growth, if not, then customer growth, or then if not, it's team or product related growth. Because you're a startup, you're just starting something new. There's no way that you've plateaued on day one, right? So those are kind of my options, and those are my goals. And then how do I try to capture them? So I'm trying to get their email so I can sit to track them, or get their commitment into taking that next step. So then I'm directing them from those assets to a landing page or a registration page, and I'm trying to measure email response and click-through rates. Following up from that, the kind of next step is, once they realize that they need to grow, I need them now to understand that the best way to grow is through fundraising, right? So some of my options available to me are things like, I can run webinars, I can run workshops, maybe it's a discovery call to understand where they're at. And my main goal here is to help them understand the difference between kind of bootstrapping, i.e., growing your business through revenue or growing through your own capital, versus fundraising, and whether or not it's right for them, because fundraising is definitely not going to be right for everyone. Some people will actually benefit more from bootstrapping rather than fundraising. But two goals there. So number one is to help them, or at least help us also identify who is the right qualified person for fundraising. And then number two is also to build credibility, to impart some more knowledge and help them see us as an expert on the topic. So then I would go into consultation calls and I would ask them about like their growth goals. I would talk to them about all of the different fundraising options, and I would kind of help them figure out if it is the right option. Again, it's not about pushing it on them, but it's really about understanding, is it right for them, right? And then now bottom of the funnel is now assuming that I know that fundraising is the right thing for them. It's about understanding, what is their timeline? Do they need to implement it now? How soon do they need funding? Those kind of things. So getting them more familiar with the fundraising process, helping them understand, expectations around how to build an investor funnel. How long does it take to convert an investor? And from there, also trying to generate a sense of urgency. Either both because we have natural and real authentic urgency because there's a limited number of people we can work with at any given period. And then number two, also depending on their personal goals, because if they want to raise by, let's say, right now it's March. Let's say they want to raise by June, they probably need to start the process early because generally it takes an average of about, I would say, 6 to 12 months to actually raise around funding. So how am I kind of addressing some of those points? That's in and around, let's say, things like the course page, helping them understand what the program goes through. Maybe it's in the direct interview to understand if they're fit for the program. Maybe it's through the demo, and the demo in this form is kind of a mini intro session to the course to help them understand and give them more knowledge as well. So just wanted to kind of walk through some of that because it helps you understand how you can create the right assets and also go after different channels in order to address your customer depending on what realizations they need to go through. So this is one exercise you can try to go through with your team. It's probably best or most valuable to do both with the marketing and the sales team together. But considering your solution or solutions, what are some of the series of realizations that your customer or customers have to go through, right? So if you have multiple solutions or multiple different types of customers, you may have to do a series for each of them. Make sense? So take some time to do this. And then I'm going to pause the video here and we'll come back and dive into the first topic, which is the greet.